Hello, hello, hello. One person, James Bogg. How's it going? I knew it was you. I saw one up in the corner that says one person is watching, and I said, I wonder if that's James. And a second later, there it was, Mr. James Boggs. Welcome, welcome, welcome to episode 251 of this Uncanny Earth. And Rob is not here. Oh, Little Beans and Rice. Awesome. So are you. It just hasn't updated yet. It might not show everybody from everywhere. I know you're watching from Twitch. James is watching from YouTube, and the tracker, I don't know if it watches from everywhere. Who knows? As long as you're in the chat room and you're saying, I'm here, then I know you're here, and I appreciate everybody. Once again, Rob is out of town. He had his speaking engagement. I don't know if it's tomorrow, maybe? Is it? Yeah, it's tomorrow. So he's already down in West Virginia overnight to prepare for his presentation that he has down there. So good luck to him, of course. And he'll tell you all about it once he gets back. That'll probably be next week's episode, or at least a part of next week's episode. Tonight, though, since you have me, it was suggested during the 250th episode, which if you missed it, we had a great time. We had an excellent time. We were over at the official Uncanny Studios. I was live there, where usually I'm not. Usually I'm in my own house on my own couch. But we were over there. We were hanging out. Gains and stains is a thing, apparently. So if you don't know what that is, go back and watch the episode and you'll remember. I know that episode took place in the middle of the day as well. It was some weird timing, but it was what we had to do. So again, if you haven't seen it, just go back to YouTube and take a look. It was a good retrospective on everything that we've done up to this point. It was suggested, and I forget by who. So if whoever's watching suggested it and you're in the chat room, tell me it was you, that we talk about the Bosnian pyramids, whether they are a real thing or whether it's just something made up. Who knows? There's a lot of evidence pointing to it being there. But in my research, I found a lot of people dogging on it, which I think the extremity of people going to dog on this topic is evidence that perhaps there's more there than we think. But I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the pyramids in China. And I am also going to talk about the hypothesis that there are pyramids underwater in Japan. And I've seen the footage of that. And I figured out why I can't do share screens like Rob does. Rob uses his laptop and his PC and things, which has Chrome on it, or it has a fully supported browser like Windows 11 or something like that. I don't remember what he has. I have my tablet here because my laptop sucks, and my tablet does not use Chrome, and this program that we're using won't let me share the screen without something like Chrome or the latest version of Windows or whatever. This is using Samsung's browser because it's a Samsung tablet. So we'll see. Maybe in the future I'll get Chrome and I'll unfortunately do that. You guys know that I don't really care for Google that much, so we'll see. But I wanted to pull up pictures and things of the things that we're going to be talking about, and I'll probably pull them up on my phone and see if I can show them on my phone and see if that works. It's not going to be great. I apologize in advance. I know it's not the most professional thing, but until I get another operating system that can handle what I needed to do, then, and it could just be because it's the tablet too. Tablets and mobile devices are more fickle as far as these apps and programs go. So, anyway, so let's talk about this. Let's talk about, which is a little bit of product placement. Let's talk about this. The Bosnian pyramids. Now, what I usually do is I usually pull up Wikipedia first just to see what the basics. Welcome, Z-Man. I take a look at what comes up first to see what people are saying about it. And I know Wikipedia is not always the most accurate source and things, so I usually cross-reference it with various things. And but I was struck by how biased the Wikipedia article is about these Bosnian pyramids. It goes really, really far to try to say They're not pyramids. They're absolutely not. Don't even believe anything in this article because it's not real. And I'm kind of like, it threw me a little bit. I was like, well, why are you trying so hard? It reminds me of the one time that I tried to edit something on Wikipedia, because the public is supposed to be able to edit anything on Wikipedia, right? It's a public database. That's what they say. And there was something about a particular politician that was supposed to have committed some kind of a crime or whatnot, which had not yet been proven in a court or anything like that. It was one of those public opinion things, and they said, oh, yeah, he definitely did it. Rah, 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 rah. And I'm not going to say who because I don't want to get into any controversy. I'm just going to use it as an example. And so all I was going to do was edit the article, because Wikipedia said that the person did it. And so I tried to edit it to put allegedly. They were alleged to have done it, which is a pretty important distinction because, guilty until proven innocent. And they wouldn't let me change it. In fact, they banned me from making changes simply for my word choice. So I'm going to take most of this, what they have here, with a heavy grain of salt, because they seem really biased against this idea that there may be pyramids in Bosnia, which is interesting for points I'm going to bring up a little bit later. Okay, so anyway, according to the Wikipedia article, it doesn't even list them as Bosnian pyramids. It lists them as the Bosnian Pyramid claims. It claims that they're pseudo-archaeological theories put forward to explain the formation of a cluster of natural hills in the area of Visoko in central Bosnia in Herzegovina. I hope I'm saying that right. Herzegovina. There is an archaeologist. He's a Bosnian-American businessman based in Texas named Samir Osmanagic. I don't know Bosnian pronunciations. I'm just going by what I see phonetically. Samir. He says that the hills are the largest human-made ancient pyramids on Earth. And the article says, and this is where the bias is coming in, it says, quote from the article, his claims have been overwhelmingly refuted by scientists, but he has proceeded to promote the area as a tourist attraction. Overwhelmingly refuted. I don't know so much about that. I'm going to go through some of the various evidence in the article, but let me pull up some of the pictures here. Let me pull up some of the pictures here and see if I can put them up here. Okay, so that's a picture. I know there's some glare and things, but that's a picture of one of the hills that's supposedly a pyramid. And here's another. Okay. And it looks pretty compelling to me, to be honest. If I'm just looking at these pictures, especially that first one, it looks like a pyramid covered in vegetation, right? Logically. It looks like it. Now, according to the article, direct study of the site by unnamed geologists, archaeologists, and other scientists, they demonstrated, quote unquote, that the hills are natural formations known as flat irons, and that there is no evidence that they were shaped by human construction. Now, flat irons, I pulled that up too to get a frame of reference. And the flat irons, they look kind of pyramid-like, but they don't look like those pictures to me. Maybe kind of like the second one a little bit, but not exactly. This is one example of flat irons. These are not pyramids. These are natural things, okay? That's in Ethiopia. And here's another from a distance in Colorado. Now, these don't look like, they don't exactly look like the pictures shown on the Bosnian page. They don't quite look the same. Now, that's not to say that they aren't, but they don't really look the same, so I don't think that they're the same thing. If they are a natural phenomenon, a natural hill, I don't think they're flat irons. I don't think so. Now, Samir initiated excavations in 2006. And here's a part where I'm kind of on something that he did, because I'm not into this kind of thing. In 2006, he since reshaped one of the hills, making it look like a stepped pyramid. And the article makes it sound like he did that of his own volition. And I would have to wonder, I kind of would want to know from the guy himself if he did that because that's what the land contoured like. Like, did he feel like he was cutting out a pyramid out of the vegetation? And that's a good point, James. Everybody in the chat room's talking about a lot of good stuff. Wikipedia is, these days, not nearly as bad, but it can sometimes be as bad as someplace like Snopes. Snopes.com, I remember back in my naive days, when I would look up to try to fact check things, I would go to Snopes and be like, oh, well, Snopes said it's not true. Until eventually I did some digging into who Snopes are and who funds them and what their particular political leanings are themselves, and found out that they're super ridiculously biased and their fact checking is not good at all. So, like I said, Wikipedia is not the most trustworthy source, but I always go there first to see what the most basic information is to compare to other things, because I think that's important. I've told you guys before on this show that I do multiple collating of data. I don't look at one news site when I look at the news. I look at an aggregate. I go to Microsoft Network, MSN, because they don't just have MSN News. It's not like one thing. It's they collect from Yahoo, from CNN, from Fox, from Village Voice, from whatever. And I go through all of these things and I say, okay, well, let me see how many of these articles agree with each other first. And if they do, let me see if they're trying to convince me of something before I try to peel back where the news is from there. Because that kind of helps me figure out where things really are. Because I don't like just mainstream off the cuff, just here, this is what the news is, because it's usually not what they tell you right up front. I'm not a super, paranoid conspiracy theory kind of person, but I'm also not like going to take face value at most of this stuff. And Wikipedia is getting close. It hasn't been too bad for me yet, but this article might push me over the line because this is a pretty biased article. Now the thing of it is that they've found other things on these hills. They have found, let me see if I can find where it's at. Now, the town of Visoko was Bosnia's capital during the Middle Ages, and they have ruins of a medieval fortress located on top of one of the hills because it's a good strategic position, which kind of lends to the fact that perhaps if there are pyramids there, that they're there for strategic purposes, because we know, at least from the Egyptian side, that they never found any actual corpses in any of the pyramids, the big ones, the Giza pyramids. So it's possible they were never meant to be tombs like supposedly it's supposed to be. They found on this hill that that not only the fortress, but other civilizations had built facilities at this site. The fortress was built over an old observation post of the Roman Empire, which had before then been constructed on top of the ruins of a further, more ancient settlement. So there's a history of people building there. There is a history of people building there, and we're getting more and more evidence that there were ancient peoples in Europe prior to or around the same time that the ancient peoples in Africa were starting to spread out. There's a lot of evidence showing up recently that says there were ancient humanoid type people in Europe who then went to Africa and then participated in the migration out of Africa. Which, while that doesn't 100% say that out of Africa is a poor theory, it just means that not every single human being came out of Africa. That was just one of the great migration periods. We've had several of those over the hundreds of thousands of years. Migration periods where people settle in a certain area and then they'll spread out from there. And Europe is looking like one of the places where people may have started out before they went to something like that. And so it makes sense that there'd be some place like Bosnia. Now I'm going to take 2 minutes to check on the dog. You guys know my dog's elderly. She has messes. She's in the kitchen. I want to make sure she hasn't done something absolutely terrible. So just let me step away from the thing for just 2 minutes and take a pee. And it looks like she's good. I'm going to come back into the frame here. Looks like she's good. So I know it's not super professional these days for me to be able to do that, but I got to. And this is live, so you guys don't got much choice. So now the thing about good one. It could have been. She goes crazy in there. She's old. She can't hardly see. She can't hardly hear, and she just runs around. And I've tried to doggy-proof it as best I could, so that it's safe for her, and so it's not ridiculous. But there's only so much you can do. I just hope most of the time, I hope she's okay. So I have to check on her. But now Samir had an interview in a publication called Nexus in 2006, and he suggested that the pyramids were most likely constructed by the Illyrians, who he says lived in the area from 12,000 BC to 500 BC. And he has since argued that it's an example of cultures building on top of other cultures. In 2017, he claimed that the structures date back 34,000 years total. Let me look at the Illyrians. Now, the Illyrians are an actual people. It's not something that he just pulled out of thin air. They were a group of Indo-European speaking peoples who inhabited the Western Balkan Peninsula in ancient times, okay? Along with the Thracians and the Greeks. So the Greeks were known for their record keeping, so we know that they exist. And they were in most of Albania, Montenegro, Kosovo, Croatia, Bosnia, and Herzegovina, and some parts of Slovenia, and some other spots. So it was a pretty widespread culture, and it's entirely possible that they might have constructed these pyramids, and then the vegetation grew naturally. We have some precedents for people covering up pyramids with vegetation, which we will get to in a few minutes. Because that's something in modern times. The curious thing about all this is you have the wider, according to Wikipedia anyway, okay, some grains of salt here. According to them, you have this huge amount of the archaeological historical community saying, oh, they're just flat irons, they're natural, they're not real, this guy's perpetuating a hoax. When the Bosnian government has jumped all over this and are all into it, they promote it along with this guy for tourism. Now, Bosnia has a complicated political history. They were part of, I believe they were part of the Soviet Union. They've had a lot of issues with Kosovo nearby. A lot of bad stuff has happened. Anytime I've heard about Bosnia and Kosovo when I was younger, it was usually warfare and different things and some ethnic things. So, I can't say for sure that the Bosnian government is on the up and up. I don't know enough about them, to be honest. In most of my looking into countries in Eastern Europe, Bosnia has not been usually at the top of my list. I know some things, but I haven't given it an exhaustive look. So I don't know. But it is interesting that they're 100% into this. They're like, hey, yeah, we're gonna let you. They funded his excavations. They've allowed him to just have the run of the place. He's set up. Um, According to the article, he has set up. What are they called? They called them archaeological parks at the hills. I'm gonna sneeze. um, where he has volunteers who are constructing botanical gardens, meditation sessions, and various other things. And the tourist traffic has aided the economy of the city of Visoko, which was located near the front of the war that they had, which had destroyed much of the country in the late 20th century, which is what I remember, it being a war-torn country. And so it could just be that they need the money and that they're savvy enough to say, hey, you know what? Egypt makes a good business with their pyramid stuff. Let's jump into that. Let's let this guy do what he does and just not listen to anybody who says they're fake. Could be. Could be. Or it could be that they 100% believe it. Maybe they bill it as part of their heritage, part of their Bosnian heritage, and they're taking the stuff that he finds and looking at it and being like, yeah, this is part of who we are, our ancient people who lived here. And so it's a point of national pride. And so it's interesting to see how they're really invested. But according to the article, so much of the scientific community says it's pure crap, it's hoax, there's nothing to it. Now, at first, when I first read this, I noticed that most of the people talking badly about it were not from Bosnia. But then it did say that that there's somebody from a museum in Bosnia. Let me see where he's at. Let's see. Okay, his name is Amar Karapus, a curator at the Historical Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina in Sarajevo, which is in Bosnia. And he said, quote, when I first read about the pyramids, I thought it was a very funny joke. I just couldn't believe that anyone in the world could believe this. Unquote. Now that's somebody in Bosnia, which is it gives you a little bit of pause, but at the same time, we know how the scientific world is as far as history and archaeology. We know that if you promote things that go against the grain, pardon me, you're kind of ostracized. I had to clear my throat there. Goodness. Maybe they're trying to get me through my coffee. All right. The scientists are coming at me through my coffee to stop me from talking about it. And so we know how hard they try to make people stick to an accepted narrative, quote unquote. So it's hard to say. It's an interesting story. It is a very interesting story. And I'm going to keep looking into this a little bit more because there's not a lot of actual information other than opinions. Man, my goodness. Get out of there. Okay. There's a lot of opinions, and then you have the Wikipedia article with it is definitely extreme on the other hand. So if this Samir guy is a good English speaker, I might see if we can get a hold of him for the show because I'd like to ask him some stuff in person. Honestly, no guarantees. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, but I think that'd be interesting. Get him on the show to actually talk about this stuff. I'll get with Rob when he gets back, and we'll see if we can send off some emails and see if we can track this guy down. I don't know what kind of hours he has. I don't know what time zone Bosnia is in. I'll have to really look into that. But that brings me to my next part of this topic, which is the Chinese pyramids. Now, this is another interesting thing because the Chinese, we have evidence that these are actual pyramids. Now, this is called a tumulus mound. I'm going to look that up for you in a minute. Let me get it in the picture. Now, that's a pyramid. It's a buried pyramid. Okay? It's interesting because it looks less like a pyramid than the Bosnian pyramids. But this, they've done excavations, they found artifacts, they know it's a man-made structure underneath all these things. This was a tumulus mound. A tumulus is a mound of earth and stones raised over a grave or graves, and they're also known as barrows or burial mounds in Serbia and Central Asia. Kurgans is what they're called in Siberia and Central Asia. So, and that looks a little bit like the pyramids. And another example of a tumulus is the tomb of King Aliats at Ben Tepe in Lydia, modern Turkey. Doesn't that look like one of those Bosnian pyramids? Doesn't that look like one of those Bosnian flat irons? My eyes are telling me one thing. Your eyes might tell you something different, but that's what it looks like to me. And so anyway, these pyramids in China, there's about 38 of them located around 25 kilometers northwest of Xi'an on the Gongjiang Plains in Shaanxi province. The most famous is the mausoleum of the first Qin emperor, northeast of Xi'an, and 1.7 kilometers west of where the Terracotta Army was found. And the interesting thing about this is they've found a lot of these things. As far back as 1667, they were finding these and talking about them. People started hearing about them in the wider world after World War II. And let's see, while they're currently tourist attractions, the Chinese have kind of been trying to cover them up. They've been putting, and it doesn't say so in this article, which tells me that there is some bias here, because I know for a fact a few years ago that there was a big story about how they were moving earthworks over the pyramids to overgrow them on purpose to make it look like they were just big hills, because the Chinese didn't really want to acknowledge that as part of their history. The Chinese government, which is the communists. And it's we know that these are there, and we know that they're a thing, and they look just like the Bosnian ones. They look so similar to me. I don't know why the rest of the scientific world won't just go to where this guy is doing excavating and excavate with him for a while, for maybe a month or two, because it's obviously sponsored by the Bosnian government. Why wouldn't you just come on in, take a look? Because I don't know if they have. I think they've just listened to the things he said and decided that they were wrong. But they look very similar to what is acknowledged by the scientific community as actual pyramids in China. They look like a tumulus mound. So, I don't know. It's super interesting. It's super interesting. And unlike the ones in Egypt, almost every one of these pyramids in China is an actual tomb. They were constructed to be tombs, and they contained remains to show that they were tombs. So Very interesting. And I'm kind of struck on a side note. I'm struck by how different pyramids can be outside of the primary definition we have for them. Because for me, generally, when I think of a pyramid, I think of the Egyptian version where it's a four-sided base, point at the top, perfectly triangular on all sides. And I know not every pyramid in Egypt is like that. I know that there's several out farther in the desert that are like the bent pyramid, or there's some that are whatever, and there's supposed to be stepped pyramids and things. But that's what I think of, and these look so much more like mounds. And if they're going to accept the Chinese version as a pyramid, why are they not being a little bit more open with the Bosnian ones? Is there something to the Bosnian pyramids that they're not interested in, or maybe they are and they don't want anybody else interested in? And this is getting into conspiracy territory, so I don't want to get too deep into that. And it could have something to do with political stuff, because again, Bosnia has a history of war with neighboring countries, and I'm not going to say anything bad about them because I don't know anybody from Bosnia, and most of what I remember is from when I was a kid. So it could be that. It could be geopolitical, and they don't want to give Bosnia any more ammo metaphysically than they can. It's entirely possible. The Chinese government, like I said, would rather their pyramids go away. But because they're big tourist attractions and the world is all into them, they've kind of been like, okay, whatever. But they're actively trying to cover them up little by little all the time, and hoping people start forgetting about them. So I believe this is in the same province. Maybe not. I'm going to check before I say that. Let's see. No, I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought for a minute that it was where they were having issues with the work camps, the illegal work camps that they've had for Islamics in their country, that they still deny exist. Re-education camps, basically. But I'm thinking of a different part. Some of the words and sounds are similar. But that brings me to the next thing on my list here, which is the Yonaguni Monument. And this is an interesting one, too, because this has never had a proper investigation. It's always had little independent people doing things and making their claims. But the greater community has not made any attempt to actually investigate this. This is the underwater formations off the coast of Yonaguni, which is the southernmost of the Ryukyu Islands in Japan, and it's east of Taiwan. And here's a picture of what it looks like underwater. Now, it looks like cut stone. It looks a lot like cut stone. And a marine geologist by the name of Masaki Kimura claims that the formations are man-made stepped monoliths. Now, neither the Japanese Agency for Cultural Affairs nor the government of Okinawa Prefecture, which is who is in charge in that part of Japan, recognize the features as important cultural artifacts, and neither government agency has carried out research or preservation work on the site, which is very interesting. Now, Deadpool, you bring up a good point. Depending on what part of the world, we're used to big pyramids being in places like in Egypt, of course, where there's nothing but sand really around them. So if they get buried by sand, they keep them uncovered to make sure they have their tourist trade and whatnot. Other places where the landscape is more prone to being claimed by nature kind of just takes its course. And then occasionally you need help if you're trying to cover up some things. Like the Chinese government, they'll do excavation projects, and if they have extra dirt, they'll bring it along and they'll plant trees and they'll plant extra grass and they'll just try to cover up the outlines of the pyramids slowly over time. Places like South America, the jungle is so thick that the only way to find some of these pyramids is, and that's where I'm going next. In places like India and places like South America, the jungle is so thick. If you don't have people constantly trying to deal with the vegetation to clear up the areas, the jungle will quickly and easily cover up anything there because that's how nature works. It's vines and things. I have a big vine growing up the side of my house. I think it looks nice. I like the look of it. And it, in just a couple of years, honestly, it has gone up the entire side of the house and got leaves all along the underside. And I'm actually going to have to try to figure out how to cut it down or something. Not the whole vine, because I like the look. I like having the side of the house kind of looks like that, but it's covering some of the windows up there, and it's problematic. But it works quick, like blink, and it's bigger. And that's just one vine. Like that's over a few years. Considering the difference in alcohol content, see, my brain's clearly somewhere else. Consider the difference in oxygen content between here in Ohio, where I'm at, for my little vine, versus the Amazon or places like that, or in India. And you have the spread of these things can go so quickly. You could lose an archaeological site within a decade. It could be completely covered up. And a lot of the places in South America, they've been covered up for so long that the only way they found them is with ground penetrating radar. They've done that. They've flown overhead and shot radar and things down into it, and they can see the outlines through the trees. But that doesn't help them get to any of that any quicker, because it's one thing to see where you need to go. It's another thing to get there through the jungle. The jungle is not a safe place necessarily. There's the animals, there's the diseases, there's everything. There's just the landscape. It's difficult. So the Japanese pyramids. Now the sea off Yonaguni, it's a popular diving location during the winter months because of its large population of hammerhead sharks. So it's a good place to observe the sharks. In 1986, Kiichiro Aratake, I think Rob would be pretty fascinated with my pronunciations there. He's into Japanese. You might enjoy this too, Deadpool, because I don't know if I'm doing any of this right. I don't speak other languages well. He's director of the Yonaguni-cho Tourism Association. He noticed some singular seabed formations resembling architectural structures. And shortly thereafter, a group of scientists directed by Masaki Kimura of the University of Ryukyus visited the formations. And they've been an attraction for divers despite strong currents. In 1997, Japanese industrialist Yasuo Watanabe sponsored an informal expedition, including, according to the article, I'm twisting my tongue all over the place, pseudo-archaeology writers, there's some bias, John Anthony West and Graham Hancock, geologist and fringe theorist Robert Schock, photographer Santa Fe, a few sport divers and instructors, and a film crew for Channel 4 and Discovery Channel. So, and Graham Hancock, I know he's checked into this kind of stuff because he has a theory. We've talked about him on the show. He had the theory that there was an extensive population or civilization before the Ice Age really set in, or at least before the end of the Ice Age. And then with the end of the Ice Age, there was a cataclysm that basically wiped them out mostly, and their survivors had to settle in other places, and we're the eventual remnants of that society. And he pointed to Yonaguni as one of those things. Now, these structures are composed of a medium to very fine sandstone and mudstone. And the scientific community believes they were deposited about 20 million years ago. And most of the rocks in the formations are connected to the underlying rock mass. Keep that in mind, as opposed to being assembled out of freestanding rocks. Now, they say that, and it's in the article as if it's a fact, but they said earlier in the article, remember, that the country of Japan has not done any extensive checking. They have not investigated these at all. It's all been independent. And they haven't let large scale operations check this out. So they have no idea whether these are actually hand carved or not. All you have is the opinions of small time groups who've gone out to take a look. Nobody has done a 100% like, we're going to get to the bottom of this and check it out. Why not? I mean, if you don't believe they're real structures, then what's the harm? Let somebody go down, let somebody go down and take a look and do some tests. Prove you right. That's what I would think. There's no reason to not let anybody do that unless you just don't want people to know, or you just are seriously that uninterested. And maybe they are. Maybe they just don't care. And I don't want to, again, talk bad about another country. Japanese culture is different than ours, and they care about different things than we do. And they just might not be interested. They might just be like, well, we don't care what they are, so we're not going to spend the money. The country itself won't finance anything to look at them. I don't know if they're actively stopping anybody, but unless you have a country's blessing to bring full-scale operations for archaeological things, the most you can usually do is small little teams. You can't do big, expansive digs. It's not like the old days where the British would head up into Egypt and hire a team full of people and just go digging in the desert and then take the artifacts home. Those days are over. Now it's all national pride. It's all, you got to go through governments. You got to go through all these channels and things. And if they don't want you to do it, the most they're going to do is give you a permit to dive down there and take a look. And that's what it is. It's simply like, nah, we're just not going to prove it. We just don't care. Could it be malicious? Maybe. Could it just be because they don't care? It could be. Now, in the case of Egypt, Egypt finances their own teams. Egypt, when international teams come in, they are only allowed to investigate in certain ways, under certain conditions, with minders from the Egyptian government. Because the Egyptian government has decided on a history that they prefer and are sticking to it 100%, no deviations. Don't come in here and try to tell us how our country started. We're not going to let you step foot in it. You're not going to get a grain of sand from us if that's the way you want to do it. So this is how it's going to be. And they actively will prevent people who have alternative theories about the pyramids and things from doing any archaeological work in Egypt. And there's nothing you can do. It's their country. It's their country. They make the rules. They call the shots. And so, and Japan, it sounds kind of like something similar to that, but I don't think it's quite as strict. I think it's more like they don't see a point to it. I don't know. I'd love to hear somebody from their government's take on it, but I don't speak Japanese, so I don't know. Maybe that'd be an interview for Rob to do, because Rob does know some Japanese. I don't know how well he's along with that. I remember it was a big thing for him quite a while ago, and he's far more knowledgeable on that language than I am. So maybe we can find somebody from Japan who's involved in the cultural sector of the government who knows a more definitive answer. Maybe. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating stuff. I would like to know more about the Bosnian pyramids, and I think maybe I will definitely pitch it to Rob. I think that we're going to see if this Samir guy is if he's available and if he speaks, and I don't want to say that in a negative way. I say that from an area of ignorance that I don't know Bosnian. I don't know most of the European non-English languages. I can barely speak anything from Spanish. I know a few German words because I listen to Rammstein. So um, I'm not a very language cultural person. I just don't have a brain for it. I took language classes in school and I was terrible at them. I just don't have apparently the mind for that kind of thing. So, but if he's able to connect with us on a language in a language way, then I would definitely like to have him on the show. And maybe I'll, like I said, maybe I'll pitch that to Rob and see what we can come up with. And maybe we'll do the same, like I said, as far as somebody from Japan. And between maybe him and maybe Deadpool will guest star to be a translator for us. There you go, big break. Then maybe I've looked into some things, but it hasn't really been much of a priority. I've got so many other things going on in my life, especially right now. I've had a bit of a beat down as far as life is going for me right now, and I didn't want to say much about it because I don't want to get into it because that's my personal life apart from the show. It's going kind of crappy right now, but no tears for me. No tears for me. Everybody just keep on going. Everything's good. So, but we'll see. I'll talk to him and I'll see what we can brainstorm about when he gets back. We'll figure some things out. But anyway, yeah, that's tonight's show. It is going to be over a little bit early because with one person, it's I'd rather have somebody else to bounce some ideas back and forth off and help fill up some of the space a little bit. But I think I covered a lot of ground. Pardon me, excuse me. And I am going to follow the Bosnian pyramid thing a little bit more closely than I had been because I'm kind of interested, especially with the anti-negative response that the greater community has put towards it as far as the science goes. And as we all know, I'm not super into the whole trust the science after the last few years, not because I'm against science, because I'm 100% for scientific everything. Scientific method is about asking questions and never accepting the final answer if there's evidence to show that it might be different. It's about always considering the other angles. You take what the most probable is, you keep that for as long as you can, but if something comes up, you investigate it, you check it out. You don't just say, nah, that's not true because we already know that this is true. Unless you absolutely know for a fact, which is very difficult. You have to have you can do it with chemical analysis. You can do it with certain mathematical things. You can do some things that can be absolute true facts without a doubt. But archaeology is not one of them. There's always something new to dig up and find out that may throw your carefully constructed theory straight into the bin. So, yeah, I'm going to follow that a little bit more closely. I'm super interested in it now. And once again, Rob should be back next week, back on track for episode 252. And he will tell you guys how the presentation went at WV Case Expo in West Virginia. We're looking at getting some more guests on. I have a couple of ideas. I have to actually do some booking myself to see if we can get some people on. And don't forget the rest of the content we have during the rest of the week. We have... I was there, yeah. He was like, no more episodes of Spotify. He's joking with you. He's getting to it. He is getting to it because I reminded him about it. But Monday, of course, is the audio podcast. Let's talk about this, which is conveniently on Spotify pretty quick after it's put out. It's on Spreaker, it's on YouTube, etc. Tuesday and Wednesday are free days. Sometimes I stream. I haven't had much time the last week or two. It's been crazy. Thursday is not the Uncanny Spirits Club. That's going to be on Sunday. So I have to make sure I upload a new episode for that for Sunday because Rob's going to be taking over Thursday for his Thursday Theological Talk, which is finally becoming a thing for people who are into that. And then Friday, of course, back to this Uncanny Earth. And there's always more content going on with on my channel as well. I'm doing my morning show with morning news. Oh yeah, I'm on it. I like organization. I'm a very organized person with my online presence. I like to be organized. I don't like mess. Don't like it at all. Um, so which is funny because in real life, he's the super clean guy at his house. Um, he's like when I'm at his house and there's like a minor thing that needs cleaned up, he's on it. Boom, 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 boom. My house, there's a bit of a mess sometimes, and I get to it when I get to it. My online stuff's like boom, but he's the opposite. Like his online stuff is kind of everywhere, and his home stuff is like boom, 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 all in order. So it's funny. But that's it. That's all I got for you. I'm glad everybody liked the show. Like, share, subscribe if you haven't done one of those things. Share anyway if you have done the other things. Always share with your friends. Always do your best to promote the show. We're trying to get the work towards monetization, and it's not easy. It requires some big numbers. So please help both on this channel and on the Spider Does Things channel, because I could really use the subscriptions and the views over there as well. So, till next time, stay uncanny.